Hello, hello. Yes, we are live. Yay. Okay. So, I am working on making some baked goods for Thanksgiving. So, let's start. Let's see if we can. There's still nobody joining us yet. So, I'm gonna grab the stuff. So, I have here a bowl of flour and salt. So this is the base for my pie crusts. So I'm gonna start with this. Move that off to the side. Hello, hello, I see somebody has joined us. Thank you. So I was just in my fridge pulling out butter that is nice and chilled. So I'm gonna use my not my cookie sheet, man, my brain. My cutting board, and I'm just gonna start chopping up the butter. Woo! I'm gonna start chopping up the butter here. And then what I will do, and because that butter was cold, I guess we're doing it slightly different. I was not anticipating that. I have used this for a lot of pies over the years already, so maybe I'll have to ask my mom to get me a new one for Christmas. So I will just cut up the butter with the knife. Let's see, let me get a bigger knife. There we go. So I'm just gonna chop up the butter. I'm already mixing it with the spoonful of flour on the cutting board here. That way it's not going to stick to each other for she showed me how to do it once, and I managed to make a really good pie crust. So she told me, and I very much enjoy doing it. There we go. There's one stick of butter, fairly well chopped up. I decided I'm going to make a triple batch of pie crust because you can always freeze the dough and have it ready to go next time you want to make a pie crust without having to do all the work, should you decide to do that. So right now I am taking the chopped up butter, putting it in the bowl with the flour. I'm going to put another stick of butter down. By overdoing it with the micro crochet, and I've been trying to take for the past 6 weeks, maybe a little bit more, and just finish up the projects that I was on a time crunch. And it's been such a hectic fall that I kind of lost track of what I was doing. But I'm going to try to be a little more consistent with lives and with both with lives and with posting shorts, so that you can continue watching the content, which I really appreciate everyone that has subscribed and everyone that watches my stuff. It is amazing to see how fast I've grown already, all because of you guys. So I really appreciate that, and thank you very much. So let's see. This stick of butter's almost small enough. There we go. That looks pretty good. Again, use my bench scraper. This recipe is very simple. It's just flour, butter, salt, and then a little bit of water, just enough to bind it together. I'm going to turn on another light, get a little bit more even lighting here, and do 2 sticks of butter, I think, make things go a little faster. Because I am on a bit of a time crunch because I have to get stuff done before my kids wake up from their naps. Chop the butter up. For those of you who are just joining us, and for so I'm currently chopping up the butter for the pie crusts. My butter slice bit the dust. I can probably bend it back, but it's easier to work with a knife right now than trying to get that fixed. So I'm just chopping up the butter, put some flour on top of it so it doesn't stick to itself. The trick to making a really good pie crust with butter is keep it as cold as possible. So right up until I started cutting the butter, I had it in the fridge. And also the water that I'm going to use in the dough fridge, so it's as cold as it can possibly get. And I used cold water when I filled the measuring cup, and then put it in the fridge so it would stay cold. So, all right, there's that. Put that in the bowl. Don't knock the butter knife off. There we go. There's that last stick. So I'm gonna put some flour on there. The salt is already mixed in with the flour. I did a bunch of prep work this morning and mixed up the dry ingredients for all the recipes I want to get to today, so that I don't have to worry about measuring out cups and cups of flour. So I'm currently doing I believe it's a triple batch of pie crust. Yes, a triple batch, because I can always put one in the freezer if I don't end up making that many pies. And I know at least, and I'm doing it for, I did the recipe for a double crust pie, and I know at least one of them is not going to be a double crust, because my husband wants a pecan or pecan, depending on how you say it, pie. Because that's one of his favorites. So I told him I would make him one. And that one does not require a top crust. So I know I will definitely have at least one extra piece, one extra crust wedge, ball, wrap, whatever you want to call it. My brain is not working. So here I have the flour and the butter. So I'm just going to mix this up. So there's even more flour covering all of the bits of butter. Set that there. Now I measured out the maximum amount of water that the recipe calls for. So I'm just going to add it in a little bit at a time. I know I'm going to need at least half of this, possibly more, but I figured start with a little bit and we'll go from there. So I'm just going to mix in the little bit of water that I just added. Stir it up. I'm using the knife because it's going to be the easiest to clean. Do another couple splashes of water. Mix it up again. Now this right here is what the consistency of the whole batch is going to be like when I'm done. It's a little bit stuck together, but not firmly stuck together. So I'm going to just keep stirring in a little bit of flour at a time. The other bonus of the knife is it will cut the butter into smaller pieces as I go, and that'll result in a little bit flakier of a crust. There we go, a little more water. Stir it in. Technically cutting it in is the term. There we go. So I'm probably gonna, my thoughts for different types of pies. Obviously, my husband wants pecan pie. And possibly doing a pumpkin pie and apple pie. Those are the three I was thinking about. And so I figured if I had the thoughts for 3 different ones, I would make enough crusts for 3 different ones. And then I can just go from there and decide whether I want to do all 3 or not. It all depends on how much time I have to cook and bake over the next couple of days. If you can hear one of my kids in the background, I apologize. It sounds like at least one of them is awake, but not unhappy. Just playing in their room. they have a small window on their doors that I can see through from here. So I'm just peeking over occasionally, seeing how the kiddos are doing, and they're doing great. So, but if I have to abruptly stop because they decide to make a mess, I apologize. All right, we're very close to the texture I need. I think we're gonna do a little bit more water, probably half of what's left there. And there we go. Yeah, I think that's coming to a good consistency. Alrighty, let's see. Did wash my hands just before I started. So I'm going to take my rings off and just see how this squishes together. I think looks like it's pretty close to just right. Might need a little bit more water because it's still a bit crumbly on the edges. Again, using about half of what was left, maybe a little bit more. Use the knife again. Just stir the water in. And once it's mostly combined, I will go back to using my hands. There we go. The knife is cleaned off. Yeah, that's the consistency I want. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn this out of the bowl onto the surface here. Set that aside for a minute. It's not quite all of the dough, but this is a lot of dough, so I need a little bit more room to work with. So I'm gonna get this all prepped, ready to go, and then I'll work on the last little bit. Add it in. So just gonna squish it together. Kind of like kneading, but you don't want to knead it because you don't want the gluten to start forming strands. You want it to be nice, flaky, and loose. So there we go. That's a nice big pat. So I'm going to squish out the center a little bit here. I'm going to use that divot to pour in the rest of the dough. There we go. Now it's nice and contained. So I'm going to set that bowl aside. And I'm going to start squishing the dough together. So I'm going to do this needs to get split into 6 pieces. And then each piece needs to go separately into the refrigerator and chill for a little bit before I roll it out and bake it. So we're probably not going to get to that point today. But the biggest point of doing this is you want to make sure that the moisture from the water is evenly incorporated into all of the bits and pieces. I'm also trying to form it into a rectangle. so I know I'm evenly splitting the pieces. There we go. I think that's pretty good as far as making sure the moisture is evenly incorporated. So what I'm going to do, it's still crumbly, but that's okay because that's part of what I'm expecting, or I am expecting that, however you want to phrase it. All right, so I am right now just shaping this rectangle so I can cut it without too much chaos. Alrighty. I think that looks pretty good. So I'm going to take my bench scraper. I'm going to cut it roughly into thirds. That's a little bit better. There we go. There we go. This piece is a little bit wider because it's also a little bit more rounded. And reshape that section. And then I'm going to cut it a little asymmetrically because the top piece does not need to be as big as the bottom piece does, especially if I use my deep pie crust. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to shape this into a disc one more time. And then there's the oven up to temperature. Now that oven is not for the pie crusts, that's for my next project, which is rolls. So I'm going to take a moment and wash my hands. And I just realized I put my towel right next to the camera, so I apologize for the wiggling. Alright. So, what I'm doing here is I'm going to get a cookie sheet. And I'm going to use my bench scraper. And I'm going to put each disc onto the cookie sheet and set it aside. Actually, I'm probably going to put it right in the fridge. And there we go. That one is in the fridge. So now I'm going to round this one off. I think my toddler is jumping on their bed. Or maybe just jumping in the bedroom in general. Can never tell with that one. They're crazy. All right, there's another disc. Get that in the fridge. All right, next wedge. Again, I'm going to cut it a little asymmetrically. Not a lot asymmetrically. Probably just cut both of them at once. That way they're all chopped and ready to go. Move that off to the side. And I'm going to flatten this and form it into a disc again. And then as soon as I'm done with this, I'll move on to shaping my rolls. Close enough. ball to start with, and then flatten it down. It's getting a little bit warmer than I want it to, but not enough to be a problem. All right, scoop that up. There we go. Let's just shuffling a couple things around in the fridge so that on the tray so that I had all of the smaller sizes on one half, and then the larger on the other half of the tray. All right, scoop that up. Again, I'm turning it into a ball. There, you can see the butter's melting a little bit there, but it's not going to be a big deal because it's going into the refrigerator. And it'll get re-chilled and it'll be fine. Preferably it wouldn't, but sometimes you got to work with what you got to work with. All right, there's that. All right, last chunk. Squish it into a disc. These need a couple hours to chill, and I will cover them with plastic wrap. In a minute, I will anyway. All right, so we're gonna set that aside. I'm gonna clean this off so I don't eat the butter on it for the next recipe. Okay, give that washcloth a rinse. Just a dash of soap because of the butter. And I'm wipe that down. There we go. Perfect. Set the washcloth aside. Take the towel. Dry off my work surface. I don't need to worry about getting it clean because I'm working with bread dough, which is flour. So I'm going to put this bowl in the sink. Now that I'm done with that, I need to grab the flour out of the cupboard. Dust the surface here. Now, don't dust your surface like that near an open flame because you will cause poof. While I myself have not done that, I have seen it happen before. So, all right. So I have my lovely dough here. I'm going to dust the top of this with flour, just like I did to my work surface. I'm putting it on a little bit thicker because this seems like it's a little bit more moist, a little bit wetter of a dough than I remembered. All right, I'm going to take a serrated knife and just cut through the dough. I'm going to start with quarters. Each quarter is the equivalent of 1 pound of dough, roughly. There we go. Plop that there. I'm going to move this off to the side, and we're going to start working with this. All right, so I'm just going to take it, fold under all the edges until the top is nice and smooth. Bottom's not, but that's okay because that's not. Set it there. Top with a little bit more flour. And then I'm going to cut this in half again. Again, rip it in half. So I'm making rolls. That's a little bit on the big size for these rolls because of the way they'll rise. So I'm just going to do one more. My goal is over the next 2 days to make a total of 3 to 4 dozen rolls. All right, so I'm just going to take them, line them up, nice little rolls, and these will rise. These will be nice and beautiful. Again, tucking in the bottom so the top looks nice and pretty. All right, and then just take this, roll it slightly so it's a little bit longer. Pinch it, add a little bit of flour, and then roll. Now, this recipe I've used for quite a few years now. I originally found it, think it was the magazine Mother Earth News that the recipe originally came from. And it's very simple. It's for the peel and whatnot, but I'm just using flour because it's easier right now. And it's a very, very simple, no knead recipe. Takes, it takes like maybe 10 minutes to prep the dough and all of the hands-on parts of making the bread. And it has a slightly sourdough taste without the need for a sourdough starter and to maintain it and all of that stuff that, as a mom, I don't have time to do. And honestly, I would probably end up forgetting that it existed and then come back to a dead starter after multiple months. The batch of rolls rising is kale. So that tells me that my sanity for the evening. Yep, I just heard a doorknob go as one of them is attempting to escape their room. So yeah, once I finish rolling this out, I'll probably need to get going. There's one. So these rise for about a half hour, and then they get transferred to the pizza stone that I have in the oven. I have 2 pizza stones that I am currently using. One is an actual stone that I was given as a gift, and the other one, I was making these for my aunt-in-law for Thanksgiving 2 years ago now, and I completely forgot to bring my pizza stone with me, or didn't think of it, because it's a 6-hour drive, and I had a just barely toddler at that point. I wasn't thinking about what we were doing beyond getting there. And so she bought a cast iron pizza stone for me and told me to bring it home with me. And it works amazing for this as well. Alrighty. This is the last quarter of the dough. Yeah, those two are causing chaos in the other room. Thankfully, they're confined and cannot cause too much damage. So there's a little bit of flour still left in the bowl, so that's what I'm using right now to dust the edges of these rolls, so I don't have to stick my dough-covered fingers back in the bag of flour, or even touch the bag of flour at this point. Probably should have thought about that and grabbed some extra flour before we started working on this, but didn't think of it, so. There we go. Alrighty. There's a little bit of flour there. That's what I'm using. There we go. It's a little sticky. There we go. Sit that one there. This one's sticking to my fingers because it doesn't have enough flour on it. And also because my fingers are sticky from the other rolls. None of these are completely symmetrical. They're all just, happen to have, wherever the cuts ended up falling as I stretched the dough apart. Now these are why I have my bench scraper. All right, now, so that these can rise, I'm just gonna give them a quick slit across the top. Don't want them to be cut super deep because don't want them like falling in half. There we go. Now they all have a little slit on the top so they can expand. And then when these are ready to go into the oven, I'll just scoop them up and then jerk this out from underneath them, and it'll work perfectly well. I'll probably put some flour on this before I start scooping them up. So I'm going to leave these on my cutting board to rise. Just shuffle these around a little bit so they have the most possible room. There we go. So now these will rise. I'll put them in the oven and I'll shape the next batch because I have another, let's see. So this did 16 rolls. I have 2 bowls of dough. So I'll have double this. Double this amount, 32 when I get done. So question is that enough for 2 dozen people? When 2 of them are my brothers-in-law. That's a good question, and that's also why I'm doing this today as opposed to doing it tomorrow. Thank you to everyone who joined me. I look forward to looking through your comments, and I will respond to as many as possible. I haven't figured out the setup quite yet to be able to respond to the comments while I'm videoing. I'm still using just my phone. Need to get on that at some point, but just working on getting the actual process down first. So I will respond to as many comments as possible in the upcoming period of time, and I look forward to seeing you with my next video. Thanks. Bye.